A modern cruise ship isn't just a floating hotel, it's a whole city. Over 6,000 passengers, 2,000 crew. They're always eating, drinking, showering, and of course, creating waste. Literal mountains of garbage, wrappers, thousands of toilets flushing, endless laundry, dishwashing, even wasted plastic. Every single day. So, where does all of it go? Do they just dump it straight into the sea? That's what most people think. But the truth is way more fascinating. Because beneath the luxury restaurants and pools, every cruise ship hides a secret, a massive underground network that works like a miniature city, recycling, treating, and processing everything passengers throw away. In fact, some ships actually release water that's cleaner than what major cities on land pump out. And their garbage? Shredded, sorted, compacted, even incinerated, long before it ever reaches a port. In this video, we're going behind the scenes to uncover one of the biggest hidden operations at sea, how cruise ships manage to keep their oceans clean while carrying the waste of thousands of people on board. So let's step inside. To understand how cruise ships manage waste, we first need to look at the scale of the problem, because the numbers are staggering. A single modern cruise ship is home to as many people as a small town, sometimes more. The world's largest ships can host over 9,000 souls on board when you count passengers and crew. Now imagine everything that comes with that. Up to 150,000 different meals, 20,000 showers, countless laundry, medical facilities, bars, swimming pools, all running non-stop, 24 hours a day. On average, one large cruise ship generates more than 250,000 gallons of wastewater per day. That includes black water, the sewage from toilets and medical facilities; greywater, water from sinks, showers, laundry, and kitchens; and bilge water, oily water that collects in the engine room. To put that in perspective, that's enough dirty water to fill around 8 to 10 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single week, and that's just the liquids. Now let's talk about garbage. Thousands of meals served every day means mountains of food scraps, plastic bottles, paper, aluminum cans, packaging, broken glass, and more. A big ship can generate 8 to 10 tons of solid waste every single day. That's like an entire neighborhood's trash truck, but out in the middle of the ocean. And it doesn't stop there. Add in cardboard from supplies, chemicals from cleaning, used cooking oil, medical waste from the onboard clinics, and even hazardous materials like paint or batteries. The logistics are mind-blowing. So when we think of cruise ships as floating cities, it's not just a metaphor. These ships have to handle the exact same problems as cities on land: sewage, garbage, and industrial waste. But in the middle of the ocean, with nowhere to dump it and nowhere to hide. And that's where the genius of their engineering comes in. Because instead of treating waste as a problem, modern cruise ships turn themselves into processing plants. Let's start with the dirtiest challenge of them all: sewage. Deep below the passenger decks, cruise ships have something most people will never see: a wastewater treatment plant built right into the ship itself. Engineers call it an advanced wastewater purification system, and it's designed to handle everything from a single toilet flush to thousands of showers running at once. The process begins with collection. Wastewater from every cabin, restaurant, laundry room, and medical facility flows through a network of pipes into the treatment area. Here, the system separates it into different streams: sewage, greywater, and oily bilge water, because each one needs to be handled differently. Step 1 is screening. Solid objects like food particles, paper, or plastics are filtered out. Nothing larger than a few millimeters makes it through. Next comes biological treatment. This is where natural bacteria are introduced to break down organic matter in the sewage, a process similar to what happens in land-based sewage plants. Think of it as a living army of microorganisms that eat the waste, leaving the water much cleaner. Then comes the high-tech part: filtration and disinfection. The water passes through ultra-fine membranes, sometimes smaller than a human hair, which trap microscopic particles. And finally, ultraviolet light or chlorine is used to kill any remaining bacteria or viruses. By the end of this process, the water is so clean that in some regions, like Alaska, it actually meets or exceeds local drinking water standards. In fact, it can be cleaner than what's released by many coastal cities on land. But what about the oily water from the engine room? That's treated separately using an oil water separator. This machine spins and filters the liquid until it meets strict international rules. No more than 15 parts of oil per million parts of water before discharge. Anything higher stays on board until it can be properly disposed of in port. So that's how the wastewater is handled. Flushed, treated, and purified before it ever touches the ocean. But sewage is only half the story. Next, let's look at what happens to the mountains of garbage produced on board. Food scraps from massive buffets, packaging from supplies, glass bottles, cans, cardboard, and even broken furniture. It all has to go somewhere. But unlike a city on land, cruise ships can't just call a garbage truck to haul it away. So cruise ships run what is essentially a 24/7 waste management plant hidden deep inside the vessel. The crew working in these areas jokingly call themselves the Invisible Army because passengers rarely see them. Yet their job is critical to keeping the ship clean and safe. Here's how it works. Sorting. Every piece of trash is carefully separated into categories: glass, plastic, aluminum, paper, and food waste. Crew members are trained to make sure nothing gets mixed up, because each type of garbage is processed in a different way. Food waste. Leftover food doesn't just sit around rotting. It's either ground up and treated to meet international environmental standards, or stored safely until it can be offloaded at a port. Glass and cans. Glass bottles are smashed into tiny pieces by specialized crushers, while cans are compacted to a fraction of their original size. This makes them easier to store and recycle later. Plastic and paper. Plastics are shredded, melted, or compacted into dense blocks. Paper and cardboard are also compacted into bales. These are all stored in a designated, temperature-controlled waste room until the ship reaches a port that can take them. Incineration. Certain types of waste, like contaminated materials, are burned in onboard incinerators at extremely high temperatures. This reduces them to ash, which takes up far less space and is disposed of safely. Zero overboard policy. Contrary to the old myths about ships dumping trash into the sea, modern cruise liners follow strict international laws. Nothing, not plastic, not food chunks, not cans, goes overboard unless it has been fully treated to the point where it's harmless to the environment. All of this happens below deck, out of sight from the passengers. By the time a cruise ends, the ship may have several tons of neatly sorted, compressed, and packaged garbage ready to be handed over to recycling facilities or waste companies at the next port. So, while you're enjoying your vacation, sipping cocktails on the deck, somewhere down below, a team of hard-working crew members is making sure the ship's hidden city of trash never gets out of control. But that doesn't mean cruise ships are harmless to the environment. Even with all the advanced systems we've talked about, there's still massive floating cities burning huge amounts of fuel, producing emissions, and creating waste that must be carefully handled. That's why international rules set strict standards for what ships can release into the ocean, how far from shore they must be, and how garbage or wastewater is treated. Cruise lines that violate these rules can face multi-million-dollar fines and bans from certain ports. As at the end of the day, a cruise ship's reputation doesn't just rest on luxury suites or fancy buffets. It rests on how responsibly it sails through fragile oceans. They may be marvels of engineering, but their future depends on one simple truth. Without healthy seas, there are no cruises. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe our channel, The Curious Corner, for more fascinating content.